Did I get ya? That's right, you know what day it is. Welcome back, everybody, to a Fright Night Friday, where I'll be reading you no-sleep horror stories from NoSleep Reddit. Hopefully you guys enjoyed last week's Fright Night Friday. That was a lot of fun to do with Metal Girl. Shout out to Metal Girl. Love you, boo. I will be adding onto that series. We're going to be doing other things, facing her fears. So I'm going to make kind of like a whole series about it. But this week, we're just going to be doing some no-sleep scary stories. And today, I think I got some good ones for you guys. So make sure the light is off, you're under your covers, you got your snacks, and you're ready to hear some
Creepy stories from NoSleep.
The first story we'll be reading tonight is called The Skinless Man. Almost no one from my childhood lives in this town anymore. Trust me, I don't want to be here, but I think it's the only way. The world needs to know he exists. It all started about 6 years back. A young girl went missing, last seen walking home from the local high school. Before that, everything was different. God, the people around here wouldn't even lock their doors at night. It really was an ideal country town back then, a jewel hidden just beyond the border of the city. But that all changed. If you're from around here, you know the story, or at least some version of it. He's basically an urban legend now, but I know the truth. Teenagers from the next town over tell his story on Halloween, or over campfires like he's some kind of myth. The story starts with a teenage girl going missing, then another. Pretty soon our whole rural town is abuzz with accusations, rumors, and helpless, hysterical parents, but no one gets caught. The story goes that a father of one of those girls had enough. The police were too disorganized or too stupid to catch the kidnapper, so he took matters into his own hands. Over the course of a week, he retraced his daughter's steps across town dozens of times. He hired a small army of private investigators and finally figured out where the kidnapper had taken her. Rather than alert the cops with the overwhelming evidence he had, the father tracked the guy down himself, and to his horror, found out he was a local priest. When the dad arrived, he discovered the awful facts. His daughter and several other young girls were viciously raped and mutilated beyond recognition. Gashes and wounds covered almost every area of their flesh, each with a long cut from behind the ear all the way down to their throats. All three girls were dead. In an act of primal rage, the father beat the priest half to death, but it wasn't over. That would have been too good for him. The father, a well-known butcher, would often carve up wild game for local hunters. With those same hands, he tied up the sick son of a bitch and skinned him alive. He flayed the priest with the same knives used on his daughter, and then he left. What he didn't know, however, was that despite the shrieking screams of agony and the ungodly amount of blood loss, the priest was still alive. Somehow it's beyond comprehension, but somehow he got off that table he was tied to and he slipped away into the shadows. Days later, the father confessed to local authorities about what he had done, and that's when they realized the body was gone. Too bad that wasn't enough to keep his wife from leaving him. She believed him wholeheartedly and couldn't bring herself to live with someone as gruesome as the psychopath who'd murdered their daughter. A few days before she left town, another body was found, her husband, hanging in a tree in the local park, with the skin of his face peeled off by what appeared to be a razor blade, both of his eyes gouged out. Another investigation, and no arrests. The trail had gone cold. It seemed like whoever hung him there left no fingerprints, no footprints even, and no trace that another person had done this, like it was done by some kind of spirit. In the end, the head detective on the case explained that the father must have done it to himself. For a man grieving over the loss of his child, a bit of insanity made sense, especially considering his erratic behavior and leading the cops to an empty warehouse full of animal blood. Just after the funeral, 2 more local girls went missing. Then a few more, each of them slowly reappearing, each with their faces sliced off, the flesh of their bodies torn up, all found hanging from trees in the woods. The police couldn't make sense of it. By the time the feds got involved, about half the families in town moved out. At some point, all the death, horror, and gore suddenly stopped. No more murders, no more ghastly tales of skinned bodies hanging from trees, no chase for a serial killer wanted for horrific slaying. That was it. It was as if someone had flipped a switch. Eventually, the out-of-town real estate developers took the many abandoned homes as an opportunity to redevelop, and thanks to that, the area quickly became pretty popular with college kids from the city. People say it's safe now, but others are certain the Skinless Man is still out there, watching, searching for his next victim. That's usually where the story ends, and someone around the campfire screams a blood-curdling cry to scare the pants off other partygoers. Those stupid fucks. They don't know how real this is. They don't understand that they're all in danger. I'm going to prove it. I need to prove it before he comes back. He's still out there. You know, I'm going to say this right now. That was actually not a bad little story. That was a nice little campfire story that you would tell your friends when you're out camping, just to try and scare them, or your kids. Or, you know what, maybe talking to your kids about filleting a priest isn't something you tell them around a campfire. But nonetheless, that was pretty good. What did you guys think? Did it scare you? Did it not do anything for you? Let's move on to the next story. So this one is called Dog Sitting, Not Safe for Work. I don't know if this qualifies as not safe for work, but I will play it safe. When I was in college, I used to do dog sitting on the side. It is an easy way to make money, and it gives you a lot of free time to study. With a smartphone, TV, and Wi-Fi, you don't really have to do much but be at someone's house. This is a story about the last time I ever dog sat. It started as usual. This young married couple was going on a week-long vacation. We talked for a bit and they were really excited about it. It was the last one they were going to go on together. Before starting a family, they told me. They really were the nicest people. The only issue is they had an odd dog and they didn't have any family nearby or a friend who could take care of him for whatever reason. So the service called me and I came over about an hour before they left to get on the flight. The dog they had was a Belgian Malinois. It's one of the bigger breeds, and this is one of the biggest ones I've ever seen. They told me he was very friendly, but he was getting on in years, and so it was getting a little weird. They insisted he was perfectly friendly, though. After letting him getting to know me, they finally left for their flight. It would be just me and this dog for about 7 days. I unpacked my things and settled in for the night. I plugged in my laptop and turned on the TV. It was a pretty nice house, and I was welcomed to any food in the fridge. The only weird thing about the house was a single locked bedroom door. It wasn't even the master bedroom. To be honest, it would have looked from the outside if it wasn't on the second floor. The dog mostly laid there on the floor next to me most of the time. I fed him and let him out as needed. I played with him some and petted him, but he didn't have much energy. When it was time to turn in, I went to the guest room they told me to use. I settled into bed and the dog wandered into the room. Not unusual at all. What was unusual was how the dog acted. It stood in the corner and sat up on its legs looking at me. It didn't lay down or try to hop onto the bed. It just stayed perfectly still and watched me. I got up to see if he needed to go out. He followed me, but didn't go outside. I went back in after locking up. He went back to the same spot to look at me while he stayed perfectly still. It was a little weird, but nothing looked threatening about it. I turned off the light and went to sleep. I woke up in the middle of the night hearing a panting noise. When I opened my eyes that had gotten used to the darkness, I saw the dog on the bed. He was sitting up straight right above me and looking at me, not making any sounds or movements, nothing threatening, just watching me. It was unsettling. The look in his eyes was not the friend look dogs usually have. Something about it was off. After looking at him, the dog put a paw over my mouth. That was a bit weird, but okay. I walked the dog outside and closed the door. He started to scratch at the door. I figured it would stop eventually, but the dog just kept scratching and scratching. Eventually, I let him in as I didn't want the clients coming home to a ruined door. He walked over back to the same spot he was before and looked at me again without moving. Clearly, I couldn't sleep like this. It just seemed weird. I got the leash and a doggy bed. I put the bed next to him and tied the leash off to the leg of a nearby drawer and turned to face the other way, but somehow I knew he was still watching. I woke up to see the dog in the exact same position. I assumed it must have moved at some point. It couldn't have stayed like that all night, right? I got up and let him out and fed him and showered. He laid down and went to sleep and acted very normal for the rest of the day. The next night he did exactly the same thing. I tied the leash to the drawer and turned around to go to bed. We repeated this process until my last night. That night, when I went to get his leash, I noticed it was gone. I had no idea where it was. That was odd because I just let him out a few hours ago, using it, and I was sure I left it on the kitchen table. I thought about leaving that night, but the couple would be back early in the morning, and I didn't want to piss anyone off and get questioned about how many nights I stayed there. I could deal with one night, and the dog didn't come off as dangerous. In either case, I messed with the pillows and blankets to make it so that the dog couldn't jump up without waking me up. If that happened, I would just shoot him down and go back to sleep or stay up. After rigging the bed, I finally was about to go to sleep. I woke up to find the dog sitting over me, its face directly over mine. I had no idea how it got up there without me knowing. I thought of everything. There was no way it was possible. After looking at me again with the same joyless eyes, he put a paw over my mouth. I had no idea what the dog was doing. That's for sure. It's not like it accomplished anything. I kicked him out of the bed and he went back to where he was before. I couldn't sleep the rest of the night and decided to stay up until the couple got home. Their flight was late, so they didn't get home until about 10. They were in a high spirits after coming back, and we had a quick talk about how everything went. I told them there were no issues and didn't bring up the strange things the dog did. Eventually, I couldn't help myself. It wasn't my business, but I was curious about the locked room. As soon as I mentioned it, the woman starts to cry uncontrollably. It seems about a year ago they actually had their first child. The room was its nursery. Everything was going fine for the first few months. One night they just woke up to find the baby had died. Somehow it managed to suffocate itself even though it was found laying on its back. It was absolutely devastating to them, not to mention that once the child came, the dog started to act strange, which only made things worse. He was being a bit mopey because he wasn't getting the attention he was used to, as well, which didn't help things. In any case, I was told they were getting ready to try again. I put together everything in my head about the story and the strange actions of the dog. I thought of saying something, but I decided to keep my mouth shut for now. Any further comment would just reopen old wounds. I drove by their place a few times after that. I knew if the wife gave birth while they still had the dog, I would need to tell them my suspicions. Thankfully, their dog passed in the 7th month of pregnancy. Sometimes when I dream, I still see that dog sitting in the corner or on the bed looking at me with those cold eyes. I imagine it putting a giant paw over my mouth and taking my breath away from me, getting rid of me so that he could be alone with his family once more. Well, I don't know what was not safe for work about that story, but that story is pretty creepy, but sad at the same time. I guess even dogs can be killers? That was a great twist, though. I really enjoyed that. The dog actually being the one that killed the child, and kind of how it all led up to that point. I was wondering, like, hey, why is this dog putting its paw over the mouth? And then the mom said, oh, the pregnancy and the child, and then it suffocated. And I was like, yeah, it's a freaking dog. But that was this week's Fright Night Friday, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the stories. Next week, I'll be putting out another video in this series, facing her fears. So I'll be doing something with a metal girl. Continue on with trying to get her to face her fears. Hopefully. Fingers crossed. So stay tuned for that. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and the stories I told tonight for Fright Night Friday. If you did, be sure to hit that sub button and ring the bell if you haven't already. Leave a like, comment, let me know what you guys thought of the stories, What else would you like to see in these Fright Night Fridays, Give me some ideas and I'll be glad to go through them and maybe even do some of them, Give me some feedback. I'd love to hear from you guys. Anyways, I will see you guys in the next video. Hopefully, you didn't get too scared. Good night.